Announcing the commencement of the first purge.
I want you to change the world, and don't think that this is going to happen peacefully or you can do it alone. We need to kill the rich. You get out there, you use your weapons, and you rip Washington apart. You hunt down the billionaires, the bank bosses, the CEOs, the scumbags and the liars, the governors, the lobbyists, the senators, because they're all the same, and you hang them.
Just remember all the good the purge does.
Good morning, everyone. May 16th, 2018, America. This video is for those people who continue to cling to the idea that we are under constitutional law. Constitution was suspended many, many years ago, and ever since then we have operated under emergency powers. And this video is to present evidence of this. It was written by Dr. Schroeder, and so these aren't my words, these are words of a doctor. And of course I knew this stuff before I read his work, but I had trouble coming up with all of the different legislation. So let's get into it. All right. A special report on the national emergency in the United States of America by Dr. Eugene Schroeder. And I'll leave a link in the description box. There's a video version of this because I'm not going to cover every tidbit here. Mostly just the highlighted sections because I've already done this video once, but I can't remember if it got deleted on my old channel or what. So I'm going to do it again, and look, if you are, or if you think you're awake and you think you're red-pilled, but you're still supporting the idea of the government or a government, you are not red-pilled. You are still a statist. And I'm not trying to insult you, okay? But you have to understand that these people want you dead. And there's plenty of evidence to demonstrate this. All right. We are going to begin with a series of documents which are representative of the documents contained in this report. We will be quoting from, in many cases, reports, Senate and congressional reports, hearings before national emergency committees, presidential papers, statutes at large, and the United States Code. They call these exhibits, okay? Exhibit 8 is taken from a book written by Swisher called Constitutional Development. Let's read the first paragraph. We may well wonder, in quotes, by the way, in view of the precedents now established, said Charles E. Hughes, Supreme Court Justice, in 1920, whether constitutional government as heretofore maintained in this republic could survive another great war, even victoriously waged. How could that happen? Surely, if we go out and fight a war and win it, we'd have to end up stronger than the day we started, wouldn't we? Justice Hughes goes on to say, in quotes, the conflict known as the World War had ended as far as military hostilities were concerned, but was not yet officially terminated. Most of the war statutes were still in effect. Many of the emergency organizations were still in operation. What is this man talking about when he speaks of war statutes in effect and emergency organizations still in operation? In 1933, Exhibit 9, Congressman Beck, speaking from the Congressional Record, states, in quotes, I think all of the damnable heresies that have ever been suggested in connection with the Constitution, the doctrine of emergency is the worst. It means that when Congress declares an emergency, there is no Constitution. And we are under a state of emergency. Therefore, there is no Constitution. Quit thinking and acting like you have a constitutional government. You do not have a constitutional government. You have a corporation for a government. The cause and effect of the doctrine of emergency is the subject of this report. In 1973, in Senate Report 93-549, Exhibit 10, the first sentence reads, since March 9th of 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Like I said, since 1933 at least. Now we can go back to Exhibit 9 just before this. And what did it say? It says that if a national emergency is declared, there is no Constitution. Now, let's return to Exhibit 10. Since March the 9th of 1933, the United States has been, in fact, in a state of declared national emergency. Referring to the middle of this exhibit, in quotes, the vast range of powers taken together confer enough authority to rule the country without reference to normal constitutional processes. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communications, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways, control the lives of all American citizens. So, if you're not of the mindset that we need to kill the state, we will never, ever live free. In order for us to be free, in order for humanity to be free, the governments have to go. Because these two forces are opposite. The force of freedom cannot exist within a governmental structure or a society controlled by government. Cannot be done. They are opposed to each other. I will continue. In the introduction to Senate Report 93-549, Exhibit 11, a majority of the people of the United States have lived all of their lives under emergency rule. Remember, this report was produced in 1973. The introduction goes on to say, for 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have, in varying degrees, been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. It continues, and in the United States, actions taken by the government in times of great crisis have from at least the Civil War in important ways shaped the present phenomenon of permanent state of national emergency. So it actually started with Abraham Lincoln. Okay? Were you taught this in school? How could it possibly be that something which could suspend our Constitution would not be taught in school? And that's because they want everyone to think we have this wonderful constitutional republic where the people have self-determination, and we don't. We don't have self-determination. Where does this Exhibit 12 come from? Is it possible that in our Constitution there could be some section which could contemplate what these previous documents are referring to? In Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution of the United States of America, we find the following words. This is in quotes. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. Habeas corpus, the great writ of liberty. This is the writ which guarantees that the government cannot charge us and hold us with any crime unless they follow the procedure of due process of law. And they don't. This writ also says, in effect, that the privilege of due process of law cannot be suspended, and that the government cannot operate its arbitrary power against the people. But we see that the great writ of of liberty can, in fact, under the Constitution, be suspended when an invasion or rebellion necessitates it. In the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, Exhibit 13, it says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a precedent or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in the time of war or public danger. We reserve the charging power for ourselves, didn't we? We didn't give that power to the government, and we also said that the government would be powerless to charge one of the citizens or one of the people of the United States with crime unless we, the people, through our grand jury, orders it to do so through an indictment or a presentment. And if we, the people, don't order it, the government cannot do it. If it tried to do it, we would simply follow the writ of habeas corpus, and they would have to release us, wouldn't they? They could not hold us. But let us recall that in Exhibit 13, it says, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in times of war or public danger. We can see that the framers of the Constitution were already contemplating times when there would be conditions under which it may be necessary to suspend the guarantees of the Constitution. This also comes from Senate Report 93, 549, Exhibit 14. In quotes, they are quite careful and restrictive on the power, but the power to support is or suspend is specifically contemplated by the Constitution in the writ of habeas corpus. Now, this is well known. This is not a concept that was not known to rulers for many, many years. The concepts of constitutional dictatorship were clear back to the Roman Republic. And there it was determined that in times of dire emergencies, yes, the Constitution and the rights of the people could be suspended temporarily until the crisis, whatever its nature, can be resolved. But once it was done, the Constitution was to be returned to its peacetime position of authority. In France, the situation under which the Constitution could be suspended is called the state of siege. In Great Britain, it's called the Defense of Realms Act. In Germany, in which Hitler became a dictator, it was simply called Article 48. In the United States, it is called the War Powers. If that was, in fact, the case, we are under a wartime emergency in this country, then there should be evidence of that war emergency in the current law that exists today. That means we should be able to go to federal code known as the USC or United States Code and find that statute, that law in existence, and if we went to the library today and picked up a copy of 12 USC and went to Section 95B, Exhibit 15, we will find a law which states, in quotes, the actions, regulations, rules, licenses, orders, and proclamation heretofore or hereafter taken, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States or the Secretary of Treasury since March 4th, 1933, pursuant to the authority conferred by subsection B of Section 5 of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended, 12 U.S.C. Section 95A, are hereby approved and confirmed. March 9th, 1933, Title 1, Section 148 Stat. What does that mean? It means that everything the President or Secretary of Treasury has done since March 5th of 1933, or anything that the President or the Secretary of Treasury is hereafter going to do, is automatically approved and confirmed. Referring back to Exhibit 10, let us remember that, according to the Congressional Record of 1973, the United States has been in a state of national emergency since 1933. Then we realize that 12 U.S.C. Section 95B is current law. This is the law that exists over this United States right this moment. I'm just giving you evidence, okay? This is evidence that we do not live under constitutional law. You need to get that notion out of your head. There is no Constitution. On March the 5th, President Roosevelt asked for special and extraordinary sessions of Congress in Proclamation 2038. He called for the special session of Congress to meet on March 9th at noon, and at that Congress he presented a bill, an act, to provide for relief in the existing national security in banking and other purposes. In the enabling portion of that act, Exhibit 17, it states, in quotes, "Be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that the Congress hereby declares that a serious emergency exists and that it is imperatively necessary speedily to put into effect remedies of uniform national application." I think you probably understand that, and I don't need to go over the good doctor's explanation of this. In the Act of March 9th, 1933, Exhibit 17, it further states in Title I, Section 1, in quotes, "The actions, regulations, rules, licenses, orders, and proclamations heretofore and hereafter taken, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States or the Secretary of the Treasury since March the 4th, 1933, pursuant to the authority conferred by Subdivision B of Section 5 of the Act of October 6 of 1917, as amended and hereby approved and confirmed." And we've seen these words before. This is the exact same wording as is found in Exhibit 15 today in Article 12, USC 95B. The language in Title 12, USC 95B is exactly the same as that found in the Act of March 9th of 1933, Chapter 1, Title 1, Section 48, Statute 1. The Act of March 9th, 1933 is still in full force and effect today. We are still under the rules of necessity. By the year 1917, the United States was involved in World War I. At that point, it was recognized that there were probably enemies of the United States or allies of the enemies of the United States living within the continental borders of our nation in a time of war. Therefore, Congress passed this act which identified who could be declared enemies of the United States, and in this act we give the government total authority over those enemies to do with as it saw fit. We also see, however, in Section 2, Subdivision C, in the middle and again at the bottom of the page, other than citizens of the United States. The Act specifically excluded citizens of the United States because we realized in 1917 that the citizens of the United States were not enemies. Thus, we were excluded from the war powers over enemies in this act. Section 5B of the same the same act, Exhibit 19, states, in quotes, that the President may investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of licenses or otherwise any transactions in foreign exchange, export, or earmarkings of gold or silver coin, or bullion, or currency, transfers of credit in any form other than credits relating solely to the transactions to be executed wholly within the United States. Again, we see here that citizens and the transactions of citizens made wholly within the United States were specifically excluded from the war powers of this act. We the people were not the enemies of our country. Therefore, the government did not have total authority over us as they were given over our enemies. It is important to draw attention again to the fact that the United States in October of 1917 were not called enemies. Subsequently, the government, under the war powers of this act, did not have the authority over us. We were still protected by the Constitution. And powers were granted over enemies of this nation. The government was empowered to do anything it deemed necessary, but not over us. This distinction made between enemies of the United States and citizens of the United States will become crucial later on. So we see that they are now going to amend Section 5B. Now let's see how it reads after it's amended. The amended version of Section 5B reads, emphasizes is ours. Okay, in quotes, during time of war or ongoing, during time of war or during any other period of national emergency declared by the President may, through any agency that he may designate or otherwise investigate, regulate, or prohibit, under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of license or otherwise any transactions in foreign exchange, transfers of credit between, or payments by banking institutions as defined by the President, and export, hoarding, melting, or earmarking gold or silver coin, bullion, or currency by any persons within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They removed in that clause, or in this version of Section 5B, that they removed the part where you were considered the enemy. So, I'm not going to, this video is already about a half hour long. I'm not going to hit all of these points, but man, I'm telling you, we do not live under constitutional law. We have not for a long time. That's why police can get away with murdering citizens. That's why the government can get away with indefinitely detaining you. That's why our country is the way it is today. You are a slave. You are property. Of course, I will mark where I left off, and there's a whole bunch more information to cover here. A whole lot more. Just not going to do it in one video. So, if you have any doubts whatsoever, it's all there in black and white. And this is why I continue to say, kill the state and live free.